Hello and welcome back to the Social Sports Podcast, where this week we're speaking to both Alex and Josh, who are both representing the Froome Falcons, a power chair football club, and we talk about how they have been dealing with lockdown, how their training works, but also gaining their insight on the prospect of disability sports. So yeah, I just wanted to first of all say thanks both for taking your time and coming to speak to us, really.
Not at all. See how it goes, eh?
But yeah, so we'll just open up with the two of you. So for both of you, really, who are you? Where are you from? And just a bit about yourself, really.
You go first, Josh.
So I'm Josh Lancaster. I've been with Froome Falcons for about 2 years. Was it 2 years ago we started, Alex?
Nearly 3.
Nearly 3 years ago. Yeah. So I've been with them since day one, really. Really good thing to do. I love my sport. So obviously I started when I was 12 when I started. 15 now. So yeah, really good thing to do.
Nice. And Alex, what about yourself?
So I am based in Bath, and I set up a company called Nova Sports and Coaching, who are a not-for-profit company who help children and adults with disabilities play sport. And part of that is setting up community sports clubs. And the Froome Falcons were one of the first that we did. It was in 2018, I believe, that we set it up. Although I set it up, I'm also a coach across many different sports. Throughout my time at university in Bath, I collected them like Pokemon cards. I've got so many of them. I won't list them all out, but a few of them in particular are wheelchair basketball, of course, power chair football, and I also go out to Europe and do some ski teaching once a year. Obviously not this year, but I'm looking forward to whenever that's allowed again.
Oh, nice. That sounds really interesting. So we'll start out. This is a question aimed at both of you, really. But how did you both get involved in power chair football? How did you see the sport and go, that's something I want to get involved with?
So for me, it was a case of I was looking for something to do, really. I think it was Mum saw the advert and I said, okay, I'll give it a go. Because for me personally, I can't propel a manual wheelchair. So my options in terms of para sports are limited because obviously most are manual wheelchair based. So it was a case of we'll give it a go, see if I like it. And it's just gone from there, really.
How did you find out, Josh? Did you read about it?
I think it was an advert somewhere that Mum read and said, do you want to have a go? I don't know where.
Okay.
I think it might have been Facebook somewhere. I'm not sure.
Good old Facebook. For me, it was whilst I was at uni. My partner, Jenny, she was coaching at a different club and she dragged me along to help out at a session. And then she decided to drag me along to a tournament, power chair football tournament she was organising. And then she wanted to set up a club closer to home. So it's her fault, completely her fault. We set up the Falcons together. She wrote me in and I got my coaching qualification done. And then I got my refereeing qualification done. So I'm probably the least likeable person there because of the number of yellow cards I've had to dish out to our players. No names. So that's how I got involved.
No, it seems really good, and it's good to see clubs getting started, really. And I can't really sympathise with you for the amount of yellow cards. And this question's more aimed at Josh, if that's okay. But could you give a brief outline as to what power chair football is and what are the rules and how do the competitors play the sport, really?
So we play in specially adapted, high-powered sports chairs. So depending on which ones you get, you've got different, they call them bumpers on the front, and that's how we move the ball around, basically. So instead of feet, we have bumpers. So we play with I think it's 33 centimeter diameter ball. And it's essentially, instead of feet, we have bumpers, and then we have a couple of added rules compared to running football. So there's no offside. It's played by 4 players on the pitch for one team at a time. So the couple of added rules we've got is the 2-on-1, which means there cannot be 2 defenders within a 3-meter radius of the ball. Basically, just to avoid the sport becoming a scrap, essentially. And then we have the 3 in the box, which means we can't have 3 defenders in the box at any one time. One of those 2 players in the box has to be the goalkeeper. So essentially, it's pretty similar to running football with a few adaptations and different rules.
Yeah, I'd probably say it's, if you've ever seen that Top Gear episode where they get in cars and they play with a football, it's pretty much that, except, well, there's quite a lot of collisions in that episode, I believe. And contact's not allowed, is it, Josh?
No, as we found out a couple of times.
Yep.
So it's a non-contact sport?
Yeah, non-contact sport. Well, so yeah, non-contact sport, a couple of different rules compared to running football, but it's pretty similar to running football, basically.
So if you don't mind me asking about it being non-contact, how do tackles work? How would you...
So what we aim for is 2 people either side, or 1 person either side of the ball, and then you've got to try and sort of spin out, I guess, to move the ball away from the person you're trying to get the ball off of. So instead of being a slide tackle, it's essentially spin out and move the ball away from your opposition's bumper.
Yeah, you're blocking them basically, aren't you? You're just getting your chair in.
Yeah.
Okay. And this would be a question for both of you, really, but I think predominantly towards Alex. So when it came to kind of founding the club and being able to establish the club, what kind of processes, or how did you go about founding the club? But also, did you face any kind of challenges with financing or anything at all?
Yeah. So the biggest barrier, I suppose, to setting up the club was the chairs, and the chairs can be very, very expensive pieces of kit. You need a sports hall that's big enough, and you need somewhere you can store the chairs that's big enough. So once we'd found the right venue, we loaned some chairs that we could use, some older chairs, just to get it going, and we attracted people to come and try it out. And that really formed the basis, the skeleton of the club. People like Josh would turn up every fortnight and they'd put the training in. And then when we realised that this was something that wasn't just a one-off hit, that people wanted to continue with this, that's when we started applying for money from grants in order to pay for our costs, like the venue, and to buy eventually our own slightly better chairs. And that's how the Falcons were really born. The challenges were definitely the finance side of things. We relied a lot on donations and support from the community, and we got a very nice sponsorship deal from a company a while back. So that was our biggest challenge, the money to start things up and to keep it going, for sure.
No, definitely. And then if I could go back to Josh, how would you say that, like, balancing the sport whilst being in education? Because obviously I know that training and homework and balancing sport and education can often be quite difficult. How would you personally, or how do you cope with that?
So when we were playing, it was every other Saturday. So I knew when it was, I knew what I had to do around it. So I kind of fit my schoolwork around playing on the Saturday or training. There's been a couple of times I've been down to Bristol, um, but it's kind of worked because it's only every other week. It's fairly easy to fit in around doing work and stuff because I know when it is, I know how much work I've got to do, I know what I've got to do, so I can juggle it all at the same time.
No, definitely that makes sense. And then this one might be aimed at both of you, but probably more towards Josh again. But how would you say that you've been coping with lockdown, and how has it affected your ability to train and play?
So in terms of training and playing, we haven't actually been able to do anything since probably March, February last year. So it's coming up to a year now, which has been really difficult for a lot of us because it was our main release, I suppose, because it allows us to play on a level playing field with everybody else. Yeah, there's a social aspect obviously as well. So it has been really difficult in terms of not being able to do anything, but obviously kind of get on with it as much as we can and go back whenever we get the green light.
No, definitely. And then probably aimed at Alex. How have you been coping with lockdown and with your company, Nova Sports and Coaching? Was it?
Yep. Yeah. Personally, I've been okay. I've been keeping myself busy. That's how I've managed it. The organisation, a lot of what we do is face-to-face work with children, with adults, and going into schools. But since we weren't able to do that, we really had to adapt, and we set up a sports equipment scheme whereby we bought loads and loads of sports equipment, and we packaged it up, put it in boxes, stuck it in our van, and we drove around Somerset, dropping the boxes off the doorsteps to families that had children with disabilities as a way to keep them active and to cope in many circumstances with being kept inside and not being able to do much. So we've really had to think about how we can adapt what we usually do. But now we're thinking we're close. Well, we're closer to normality once more, and we'd very much like to go back to face and have people like Josh and the other Falcons back at training in Froome. We're really looking forward to that moment.
Definitely.
That sounds absolutely amazing, especially with the boxing and just going around and giving these sports equipments to families in the area. That sounds amazing.
I think we did 469 boxes, and we did 5,000 miles in the van or so. It was something ridiculous. So many hula hoops and footballs and Nerf vortexes, and oh my goodness, it was like an Amazon depot in our kitchen.
That sounds absolutely amazing. Well done. And if I could ask this one to both of you, what would you say is your favourite part about the sport? What's the favourite bit where when someone asks you about it, you say, oh, it's great, we can do this? What would you say is your kind of favourite thing about playing the sport?
Probably the ability to play on a level playing field with everybody else without having to make certain adaptations. That's obviously quite nice because I've always had a keen interest in sport, which means I've always found ways around not being able to do things. But obviously there was an element of having to adapt things and change things. It's actually quite nice not to have to do that and be able to play on a level playing field with everybody else.
Yeah, what Josh said, I think that's really key. And it's something that has been fed back to us by a lot of parents. The Falcons is actually open to, primarily it's people with physical disabilities. You've got to have a physical disability to play. But we extend that and we say that their siblings can join in as well. So we've actually got quite a few siblings that come to the club as well. And for a lot of parents, there's no other sports club out there where both of them can do it at the same time on a level playing field. You're not really advantaged if you're older or younger, if you've got more mobility, if you've got slightly less mobility, if you're a male, female. Everyone is grouped together. You're all in a chair, and it's completely down to your application, your attitude, and your talent to play and to succeed. So we've had some really lovely stories from parents about how important the club is to them and to their children.
No, definitely, especially hearing the work that you guys have done. And this would be this one's aimed at both of you again. What would you say have been your personal highlight in the sport, if you like? What would you say has been your real standout moment in either competing or training?
Probably the competing part for me would be the biggest standout. As a club, we play in the Southwest Regional League, so that's been a really good thing to do for me personally. I spend a lot of my time coaching in other sports, but I've never really been able to compete properly, and that chance to actually compete and have that competitive side to it as well is really good.
Yeah, on the theme of competition, maybe it's a view held by some that disability sport is just kind of like a token gesture, give them something to do, but it's absolutely not the case. And why shouldn't people with disabilities have a competition pathway? And we provide the training. We want it to be fun, so people turn up and enjoy themselves. But actually, the competition is so important to so many, especially Josh. So, in terms of my personal highlights, I've actually got a couple, if I may. The first one was from right at the beginning. When Jenny and I were looking to set this up, we had a massive obstacle thrown at us, and we essentially gave up. And we wrote an email to some of the parents. We said, we can't do this. It was about 5 minutes later, we got called by a parent and said, absolutely not, you cannot give up. You cannot do this. This is so important. And she gave us the motivation to go out and actually work around this barrier. And we succeeded. So with thanks to now our chairperson, Linda Munro, that's why the Falcons are here. So that was a real spark for us. Going on into training, we had the club has been so successful that although we provide the chairs, we've had a number of children get their own chairs, thousands of pounds of money fundraising just so they can play in their own chair. That's been a real highlight for me, the fact that people are so invested in the club and in the sport. Josh included, managed to raise funds for the best chair going, which I'm sure he might want to talk about. And then lastly, it was last season, and it was one of our competitive games. We managed to secure our first point. It was just a 2-2 draw against another team, but it was such a memorable moment because it was our real announcement in the Southwest that we were here to play. We're the youngest team, and the goal to level it up, which gained us our point, was from an 8-year-old. And the goalkeeper he scored past was over 5 times his age. The crowd went wild. Everyone was rooting for us. And it was just such a happy, happy memory for me. And although we didn't win, it did not matter. We played amazingly and we got 1 point. It made the paper. And the 8-year-old lad, Joseph, shout out to Joseph, he got to read out the story in his assembly at school. And that's just priceless. It's just amazing.
Yeah, I can remember that game. I think I scored in that game as well, actually.
Oh, sorry, I forgot to mention. Yeah, Josh got the first goal. Joseph got the second goal.
Which I remember because I think it was a free kick.
Yeah.
And all I was thinking was just put it in the box. But then it was actually Alex that pointed out, actually, because the referee had told the goalkeeper he had to move forward because he was within a certain distance of the ball. And it was actually Alex that pointed out, hang on a minute, if you put the ball towards the back of his chair and the ball comes off his chair and goes in the goal stands because it was touched by somebody before it went in.
It was a little bit sneaky, wasn't it, Josh?
Yeah, it was.
Within the rules, but yeah, it was an indirect free kick, and if it touched any other player and went in, then it was okay. So Josh walloped the ball at someone and it came off him. Still counts.
Yeah, we'll give thanks to Alex on that one because I was just thinking put it in the box. But, yeah.
I've got one more, and it's not as emphatic as the goals, but we've got a container of our power chairs, our leisure centre that we use, and the moment that we got a concrete floor fitted out from where we keep the chairs to the sports hall, instead of the mud that we had to like heave the chairs over.
Oh yeah.
That made my life 10 times better. So a highlight was concrete for me.
There was another one as well. I think it was. I think one of the other main things was seeing other people develop at the club in terms of, because I'm probably, am I right in saying, Alex, that I'm probably one of the oldest at the club?
You're one of the oldest, yeah, probably third or fourth oldest, yeah.
So yeah, seeing some of the younger lads come up through has been great, especially from the point of view of I've got a couple of coaching qualifications as well, so I'm coach in other sports. So actually being able to apply that to seeing other people come up through is brilliant because you see the enjoyment they get out of it as well. That's another highlight for me.
That should have been my answer as well, shouldn't it? No, Josh is a really important part of our team. He's a real mentor to a lot of the younger boys and girls. And you wouldn't believe this, but he's the noisiest, loudest player in the entire region. He bellows at people to move, to get into position, to pass. He's a real leader. It really shows on the pitch.
Definitely. That sounds absolutely amazing, especially with the goals and the tight games. It just sounds brilliant. If I could ask Josh about what's the chair? What are the specifications of the chair and how does it work really?
So they are basically 2 car batteries. Is its power source. And small but high powered motor. Is the best way of describing it really. So they are specially adapted. They go slightly faster than your everyday power chair. I think they're about 8 miles an hour.
About that.
Roughly. So yeah, slightly higher powered motor than your normal power chair. Obviously they've got the bumper on the front as well. And they're a lot lower, which means you can turn in a tighter zone because you've got a lower center of gravity, so you can turn faster. You can basically turn them on a sixpence, really. So if you want to, which in a game is great because if you've got someone going past you, you can then turn around and you're back at them again. So yeah, they're really good chairs. It's similar to an everyday chair, but obviously they got their adaptations and go slightly faster, which is always nice.
There's a difference between your chair and some of the other chairs, isn't there, Josh?
Yeah. So the one I've got is probably one of the best ones you can get on. Probably is because there's basically 2 main brands. Would you say, Alex? 2 main brands within power chairs, or 3?
There's 2 different levels. There's your chairs level, and then there's kind of the older chairs. And a lot of our club members have the older chairs, don't they?
So I've got what it's called a Strike Force, and it's brilliant chair. So the main difference between the 2 would probably be the bumper and the speed. So the bumper's actually square instead of round. So on the older chairs, the bumpers are more like half a tire sort of shape, whereas this one is a rectangle. So it's slightly easier to control the ball, move the ball about than it is with some of the older chairs. So that's always nice as well, being able to control the ball. That's probably the main difference. And then I think it goes slightly faster as well.
What about the price?
Price of the chair would be, that's another major point, would be, so the one I've got is 10,000, brand new. The other ones sort of range between 5,000 and 7,000. Would you say, Alex?
Yeah, if you get them new, the ones we got second hand at about 500 quid each. So yeah,
Major price difference. But I think we've got a couple of the other players managed to raise money for strike forces as well, which would be really good for the team. Because like I say, they are slightly easier to move and control than some of the older chairs. So yeah, that would be good for the team when we can get back.
Yeah, there's parallels to Formula One here, isn't there? That the chair, i.e. the car, is really important. Like you want it to be the best it can be, the best engineering and all that. But also the driver, the person in it, also has to be really good. So we're slowly trying to improve both sides of things, the cars and the drivers, as it were.
No, definitely. And this is probably more aimed at Alex. So obviously you mentioned that you play in the Southwest League. What other teams do you face? What other teams are in the Southwest League that you face off against?
So we have team from Bristol. We have a team from Exeter, from Plymouth, and from Cornwall. And we will all meet in one central location, which last season and before that was in Exeter. We're there for the day, and all the teams kind of play against each other. Usually four or five times across the season, maybe 6.
Yeah, I think it's about that. Yeah. Probably about 6 month season, once a month. So yeah, probably about that. Yeah, 5, 6 times a month, 5, 6 times a year.
And games last 40 minutes, so it's 20-minute halves.
Yep.
And there's goalposts without crossbar. Got substitutions.
Speed testing as well.
Sorry, what did you say, Josh?
Speed testing as well, which is interesting the first time you do it.
Why do we have speed testing?
Basically, so speed testing is one player will be picked from each team at the end of the game to go and be speed tested. And it's basically just to make sure no one's changed the speed that they were speed tested at before the game. So once you've selected your speed before the game, you then have to stay on that speed throughout the game, just to make sure it's fair, really. It's essentially two, I don't know what they call them, Alex.
Rollers.
So, rollers. So 2 on each wheel, and then the referee will pull the joystick forward on the controller, and then it will give you spins per seconds.
Yeah.
Spins per seconds on each wheel, which then determines the speed. And obviously, that's then the speed you've got to stick out throughout the game. So it just makes it a bit more fair, rather than different people going at different speeds at different points in the game. Which is
it's essentially to stop chair doping. It's to stop like someone tinkering with their chair to make them go 10 miles an hour instead of 8, should we say, which would be illegal. So the referee checks to make sure that they're doing it right, they're doing it within the rules.
You mentioned the rollers. The image that I've got in my mind is like one of the rolling roads that you'd drive a car up to do horsepower testing. Is it something similar to that?
Essentially, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So you're not actually moving, sorry. So you're not actually moving. It's just literally on the rollers, joystick forward, and then it obviously gives you the spins. So yeah, essentially, it's pretty similar to that. Yeah.
No, definitely. And then probably the final question, if you don't mind, for one more question. This would be aimed at both of you. Do you think that disability sports, right from kind of grassroots clubs all the way up to Team GB and the professional element of things, do you think that they're on the rise, both in terms of kind of public awareness, but also viable career options?
In terms of career options, there aren't as many people turning it into a career as mainstream sports, so to speak. There's been a lot of work going on behind the scenes, and it has got better in terms of awareness and the amount of people participating in different sports. But there is still a long way to go. Certainly in this county, there's a lot of most of the sport is aimed at cities and bigger towns because that's where all the funding is. So, for me, in terms of when we are training, it's sort of a 45-minute commute either way to get to play. Like I said, just mostly because that's where all the funding's targeted.
Yeah, it's probably one of the problems. There's only 100 wheelchair football clubs in the UK. There's really not that many, so there's still work to do. But if I address the awareness side of things first, I think the Paralympics, when it first came to London in 2012, there was huge hype around that, and everyone was really engaged. We look at Tokyo, which was meant to be last year. They actually had 3 times the amount of interest to buy tickets than London did. So if you look at that, then yeah, for sure, people were aware and interested in the Paralympics. But that's at the elite level. That's kind of in its own microcosm. Compared to the grassroots, it's very, very different. And what I've found as I've been helping set up these clubs like Falcons, chatting to parents who have children with disabilities, a lot of them aren't aware of the opportunities or the clubs or even indeed the sport that could be appropriate for their child. And that's really disappointing to hear that's not really filtering down to a lot of people. And part of the problem with wheelchair football is that it's not on TV. It's not in the Paralympics. So therefore, it's not getting that exposure that it really, really could do with. So there's work to do there. If I think about the career path, absolutely. In so many sports, there's ways you can earn a living and get paid for it, but I don't know the amounts of money involved. And certainly with wheelchair football, that's not a viable option just yet, is it, Josh?
No.
They're not professional. I think their aim is to be one day. And I'm sure they will get there.
I think if you take into consideration that Jenny and Alex actually do so much work within the county that they run the only wheelchair football team in Somerset, that's the scale of the task they're doing, which just shows you how much work there is to be done. I mean, it's getting better, but there is still a lot of work to be done in terms of, like Alex said, it's not in the Paralympics. It's not getting the same exposure that maybe running would, so it's not considered to be a mainstream sport, if you like.
We've got kind of the whole of Somerset to get players from, but ideally there should be 5 teams in Somerset, not 1. In Bath, where I am, I know there's 10 rugby clubs. Why shouldn't there be 10 wheelchair football clubs in the county? There's a lot of work that still needs to go on, but part of the problem is that the sport costs a lot of money. Disability sport does cost a lot of money, and the equipment costs a lot, so they're not always easy to set up, and you need the right people to support it. So
I think the other thing... Go on.
No, you go for it.
I think the other thing is, someone once described it to me as soon as you put the word wheelchair or disability in front of a sport, automatically your options drop straight away. It's almost a case of, okay, this is the sport you want to do, this is where you're going to have to go. There's no flexibility at all, because there's just not enough to go around, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's so true. There's so few options for people with disabilities, learning and physical, and we're doing our best to change that. Absolutely.
No, definitely. I can fully appreciate that it's coming, but it's still got a long way to go. And if there's anything that I can do at all to help, just please let us know, really.
Appreciate that, Paddy. Thank you.
But other than that, that's all the questions that I've got for you both today. I just wanted to say a massive thanks for you both coming out and taking the time and talking to us.
Can I do a quick shout out to my players?
Of course, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Right. I've written them down, but I'm going to try and remember them. So we got Finn, Carmela, George and James. We've got Joel and Ian, Etty and Henry. Obviously, we've got Josh, captain El Capitano, Joseph, Joe and Ed, Coven, Hayden, Dom, Ethan, Theo, Will, our coach, and then also our lovely committee who do so much for the club. So everyone.
Alfie as well.
Oh no, Alfie. Oh, I'm so sorry, Alfie. You're first on my list that I've written down. You'll hate me for that. Told you I'm the least likable. So yeah, we hope to see you all training very soon, boys and girls.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Thanks so much for today.
Cheers,
Thank you.
Have a good night, guys.
Bye-bye. Bye, Josh.
Cheers.
Thank you both of you for coming on the call today, and a massive thank you for our listeners at home as well. If you want more content like this, please like and subscribe to our Twitter, our Facebook, our LinkedIn, or our YouTube at Social CIC. That's all we've got for this week. See you next time.